Hello there, Ramblers, and welcome back to Reese Rambles, my weekly podcast all about the latest comings and goings, movings and shakings, and indeed all the rest of it in the worlds of vintage and retro computing, gaming, and technology. Hope you're all doing well out there. As for me, here in the UK, it's gone a little bit chilly again, although we did have a couple of days where it was perhaps a little bit more pleasant, but yeah. It's gone cold again, so that's the weather for you. In other news, Look Mum No Computer has unveiled his Eurovision entry, of course, which I talked about last week. I couldn't find it anywhere last week when I looked, if you remember, and that's because it isn't actually officially released until midnight, Thursday/Friday. Which I should have known, and it was something that was kind of being reported quite widely, so apologies for that, but it is out. I'm not going to show any of it to you at all. I'm not even going to hit play on the video muted, because I have made that mistake in the past with Eurovision stuff. There was the Windows 95 man, was that last year or was it the year before? And I played, I don't know, about 20 seconds of the video muted, and I got hit for copyright on that. And I am very, very mindful of this, because in recent weeks, Adam Buxton of Adam and Joe fame, although to be fair, I think it was Channel 4's actual footage. Of course, he did that song about shorts, which I had as one of my videos of the week. That got a copyright claim. And also the Chaz and Dave Christmas extravaganza, which I had as one of my Christmas videos of the week, also got hit with a copyright claim on YouTube. And it's a pain. You have to dispute them, and it limits the visibility and the reach of your videos and all of that stuff. So I'm just going to have to stop being more careful with this, which is a huge pain, because what I'm doing here is reporting on these things and telling people to go and watch them and sending traffic to them. And, commentary is perfectly acceptable under the, fair use, fair dealings, whatever you want to call it. I'm sure you've all seen the Tom Scott video by now. But because of the DMCA, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, and the way that that's designed, it just automatically gets taken down, and then I have to dispute it, and then someone at the other end, be that a human or whatever, some other automated system, decides whether I, decides the fate of my video, which doesn't seem very fair, but I don't know, is there a better system? Probably. Also, the PicoIDE. Of course, I released a video all about the PicoIDE. Let's just have a little look at that. It's doing all right. It's doing reasonably well. That was my video for this week. I skipped early access on that. Usually, I would release my videos on a Wednesday for my supporters on Patreon and Ko-fi, and of course, my YouTube channel members. But this week, I didn't. I actually just put it public on the Wednesday, and the reason for that was because there were basically barely over 24 hours left on the crowdfunding thing on Crowd Supply. I nearly said Kickstarter there. Of course, that's its own website in its own right. But this was funded on Crowd Supply. This isn't funding the development of the project or anything like that. The hardware is completely finished. The firmware is, obviously, it's kind of ongoing, but it is in a state where it is very, very functional and working. If you have seen my video, this is just to kind of cover manufacturing costs and getting set up for the ABS injection molding for the cases and that kind of stuff. And this is 1,000% funded, 1,002%. It was a $35,000 goal for the project, and it's raised $350,790. Now the campaign has finished, which is insane, but it just goes to show the sheer demand for a device like this in the retro computing world. And as I found in my own video, this thing is going to be a real game changer. It's really very, very impressive in what it does. I know there's been some debate out there about what it doesn't do. People always focus on the negatives. I think, I kind of tried to approach it as what can this thing do for me? How is this useful to me? I found that it was going to be incredibly useful indeed. But hey, there's always naysayers with anything on the internet. I love it. I think it's great. Now, of course, one of the questions that does keep coming up is where you can actually buy one of these things after this initial run is done, because of course they will be on sale, they will be widely available. And I don't think that anything has actually been officially announced. And I don't know if I'm overstepping a mark or something by talking about this, but hopefully it's fairly obvious to anyone. I do know that here in the UK, Flame Lily IT, or specifically the shop Flame Lily Retro, will be stocking the Pico Mem. It is here listed on the website. There's no details or anything like that, but there is a placeholder on here for this. So, hey, I guess that makes it public enough. And I will say, just in the interest of full disclosure, that Derek, who runs Flame Lily, he's a friend of mine. I've met him a few times at various events and things, and we do chat online and stuff. But he is absolutely brilliant. He's the main stockist in the UK for Blue Scuzzy, Pico Gus, Pico Mem, and a few other kind of retro computing products. He's a bloody lovely chap. He's, is a good egg. So yeah, if you are looking to get your hands on one of those in the UK, I will say keep an eye on Flame Lily IT. Nothing has been officially announced as yet as far as pricing or availability is concerned. There are some stockists in the US and in the rest of the world, but I think I'm going to save that until it does become widely available, and then I'll talk about that closer to the time and let you know where you can get one of those. But I guess I just wanted to say, a big congratulations to Ian for another successful project. I think what he's created here is brilliant. I think it's going to be very useful. I was sent one for review. I do get to keep it. I do like to be very, very clear about these things, but I hope you understand that that isn't the reason I'm singing its praises. If I'd been sent it and it was useless, you probably never would have heard about it. So, yeah, as you know, I'm a big fan of the PicoGus, and I think the PicoIDE is another big game changer for the retro computing world. But anyway, I got a bit of flack last time for talking a bit too much about the PicoIDE, so I will leave it at that. Just nice to see another retro project succeeding, and, it's open source hardware as per the PicoGus. Ian's a really good guy, a really good member of the community, and, of course, if you want to know a bit more about him, there was an interview with him on This Week in Retro a few weeks ago, so I guess you could go and check that out. Anyway, that's that. Let's get on with the rest of the stories for this week. Last week, I talked a little bit about some goings-on at Microsoft, and specifically the Xbox division within Microsoft, although I guess Xbox is its own kind of separate entity in its own right by this point. I'm not really sure how all of that works. But I talked about Phil Spencer, who, of course, had been CEO of the Xbox, I guess, since I think it was 2012, and him officially retiring. And talks a bit about the future of the brand and about some of the speculation online. Not much had really been announced, other than the fact that, I'm going to have to look this name up, Asha Sharma had taken over as the new CEO of Xbox, and there was some concern because Asha comes from an AI background within Microsoft, and it seemed that they were perhaps putting their top AI person in charge of their console division, which has raised some eyebrows, as you might expect. What with all of the layoffs going off in the gaming industry, artists and stuff being replaced by AI. There has been a bit of news actually on this front, although I'm hesitant to call it news because there's not really all that much information here, but I suppose I should report on it because it is part and parcel of the whole thing. So I've gone with the BBC News coverage of this just because it seems quite comprehensive. Xbox confirms new console is coming, but can it revive the brand? Yes, that's right. There is a new console coming from Xbox, which is always quite exciting, isn't it? Although the last time I had a new Xbox was a 360. So that was quite a while ago. Anyway, story here by Tom Richardson. As I said, BBC News, or specifically BBC Newsbeat, which is kind of their youth outlet, I guess. Microsoft's Xbox division has confirmed it is working on a new console, codenamed Project Helix. The company said the next generation device would lead in performance and play both Xbox and PC games in a departure from its previous machines. Rumours have swirled for some time that the company, which upset some long-term fans when it began to release exclusive titles on rivals PlayStation and Nintendo Switch, would pivot towards a hybrid machine. Microsoft's new gaming chief executive, Asha Sharma, said the announcement was part of its commitment to the return of Xbox as a brand. Of course, you no doubt know that a few years ago there was some talk about Xbox being more of a concept, more of a I don't even know, not a console, but like an idea. I think people they're losing the plot at Microsoft, aren't they? Anyway, all this Copilot stuff and everything else. Anyway, what is Project Helix, according to the BBC? You'll probably notice that I'm quite distracted today. Project Helix news was light on details, but sparked big questions. Continues the BBC News story. Although the announcement hinted at a powerful next-generation machine, it didn't give any hint of its planned specifications, nor reveal what it will look like. There was no mention of price, something that remains a big concern as prices of vital RAM and storage devices used in hundreds of electronic devices continued to climb, thanks to AI. That's me, not the story. The component shortage, continues the story, will also raise questions about a likely release date, especially after Valve, the company behind PC game store Steam, had to revise plans to launch its own hybrid PC console early this year. I was going to talk about that in this week's Ramble. Yes, the Steam machine has also been delayed. So there you go. Maybe we'll talk about that a bit later on, although I don't think there's really much else to say on that either. It's also possible... Stop getting distracted, Reese. That Microsoft may leave manufacturing the device to another company, as it did with last year's Xbox-branded handheld console built by hardware company ROG. Isn't that just Asus or Asus. Don't they make the ROG stuff? Is it Asus or is it Asus? I don't like to say Asus. I think it sounds a bit stupid. But Xbox boss Sharma said more would be revealed when the annual Game Developers Conference, or GDC, gets going in San Francisco next week. So it talks a bit, and I did mention this last week, but the story goes on to talk a bit about, of course, their acquisition of Activision Blizzard in 2023 for a record-breaking $69 billion. That's a lot of money. And some of their other studio takeovers. So Fallout maker Bethesda, Forza Horizon Studio Playground Games, and also talks about some of the layoffs and the closing of some popular studios, prompting backlash from fans. There's also mention here of the Game Pass, of course, which is the monthly subscription thing. And, of course, talk about some Xbox exclusives which were released on other consoles. Although that was quite a long time ago now, so you'd think people would be over that by now. A recent earnings report made for less optimistic reading, recording a 9% fall in gaming revenue and a 32% drop in hardware revenue. The company puts this down to a quieter slate of releases in the past 12 months, and it does have several big titles, including fantasy adventure Fable, coming in 2026. So, while some fans have declared that Xbox is back following the Project Helix reveal, others have pointed out that the news isn't exactly a bombshell. Matt Piscatella, a games industry analyst, has said that Microsoft have been talking up new hardware plans for months, which of course they have. They have dropped all sorts of hints in recent kind of months and years. And just some commitment from Sharma about commitment to Xbox and all that stuff as well. So, and Xbox executive Matt Booty, who's always worth a mention in these stories. Shout out to Matt Booty. No news in particular. I guess there is a new console coming from Xbox. It is called Project Helix. We don't really know much more than that, other than apparently it plays PC games in addition to Xbox games. Is it going to be some kind of... I mean, I guess it's not going to be SteamOS based. That would be a huge departure for, a huge... not a big vote of confidence for Windows, would it, from Microsoft? But you never know. Perhaps it will be running some kind of emulator, or I don't know. Very interesting, PC-based hardware. But then what's the point? If it's just a PC, why release Xbox-branded games that only work on that machine in addition to PC games that will work on all PCs? It's not logical, is it, once you start to think it through? Anyway, that's that. Project Helix, it's coming at some point. New people in charge at Microsoft, including Asher Sharma and Matt Booty. Ask me about Loom. All right, don't ask me about Loom. But of course, a famous character in the bar, in the Scum Bar, in the original Monkey Island game with his badge. I can't remember the name. Was it Cobb? Was that the name of the pirate? And you asked him about Loom, and he would give you this whole sales spiel about, of course, another point-and-click adventure game from LucasArts. And I have, since then, actually played Loom. If you've been following me for a very long time, you'll no doubt remember me playing it on an original IBM PC using the PC speaker, which, considering Loom is a very kind of music-themed game and a music-driven game, was a very painful experience indeed, and one that has gone down in history among my community. So if you are one of my OGs, and you do remember that, I'm sorry. Anyway, of course, Monkey Island was my first experience with point-and-click adventure games. And while I never really got into them in a huge way, of course, I went on to play Monkey Island 2. I played all of the games in the series, including the Telltale episodes that they released, and the new one, which I actually liked quite a lot. I know a lot of people out there complain about the art style and about dumbing down and stuff, but I thought it was quite a good story and a good little adventure. And, of course, over the years, I have checked out various other point-and-click adventure games. Simon the Sorcerer was one of them. Am I going to sit here and attempt to name them all? Maniac Mansion. I'm not going to claim to have played all the classics. I have dabbled in stuff like Day of the Tentacle and Grim Fandango in more recent years, but they did kind of, by and large, pass me by at the time. I was all about Monkey Island. But of course, one of the things that's quite notorious about these point-and-click adventure games is that they are very hard. Oh, Thimbleweed Park, that's the other one. I actually backed that. I actually bought the big box copy of that, which I have in the other room in my little museum. But anyway, of course, these games are remembered for being quite obtuse. Some of the puzzles and things, some of the combinations of items that you have to use together to try to solve some of the puzzles. And somebody out there has turned this into a gaming aptitude test. And it turns out that people aren't very good at it, perhaps unsurprisingly. So, over on PCGamer.com, more than 800 gamers took an exam to prove they could complete an 80s adventure game without peeking at a walkthrough. And only 2 passed. Only 0.25% of players completed the AGAT, the Adventure Game Aptitude Test, designed by Finnish developer Woe Industries. And we've got a lovely screenshot here, which I believe is from Maniac Mansion, actually. I actually, at first glance, thought that was Thimbleweed Park, because I know that there was a huge inspiration for that, of course, made by the same people. But anyway, there's a good feeling. The story continues when you earn an achievement in a game and see that fewer than 1% of players have also earned it. It makes you feel like you've got some real gamer cred, like you're made of sterner stuff than almost everyone else playing. A couple of gamers, and only a couple, are basking in that type of pride after last Saturday, when the first ever Adventure Game Aptitude Test was administered. Designed by developer Woe Industries, the AGAT challenged players to complete an 80s adventure game without using a walkthrough. Players weren't told what adventure game they'd be playing in advance, and they were monitored via webcam and microphone by a legitimate online proctoring software to determine if they were looking up hints on a second window, using their phones to cheat, or getting help from someone off screen. Over 800 participants had 4 hours to complete Lucasfilm Games' 1987 graphic adventure, Maniac Mansion, and it was an absolute bloodbath. According to Woe Industries, there were 831 attempts, plus an additional 168 who began the test too late and were disqualified, and only 2 people actually passed the exam. So there are 2 people out there who can complete Maniac Mansion in under 4 hours. Perhaps they've played it before. Were they screened for that? I'm not quite sure. 0.24% pass rate makes the AGAT one of the most prestigious and rigorous exams in the world, said Woe Industries proudly on Blue Sky. The SAT, MCAT, and most forklift operator certifications lie prostrate at our feet. I asked Woe Industries for more statistics about the test, which began at between 1 and 2 p.m. EST on Saturday. It's a standardised test. You can't just take it whenever you want. And the rigid start time meant a lot of players weren't free to spend 4 hours on a Saturday playing an old adventure game. So apparently 4,500 people signed up for this thing. Only 831 actually ended up doing it due to the fact that it was in the middle of the day on a Saturday, I guess. And asking people to play this game under very unconventional and ridiculous circumstances to see what kind of gameplay that elicited from them. Maintaining a fixed start time was a big part of that. But if we ever do it again, maybe we'll try to find a more universally accessible time. And there were a few oddities reported. So it says here on PC Gamer, we also had one person send us a bribe, we assume joking. Test takers are instructed to send a screenshot of their windscreen when submitting the test, but they sent us a screenshot of a potential bank transfer of $1,000. As any respected institute for higher learning surely would, Woe Industries respectfully declined. That wasn't the only unusual offering. 2 people submitted a Fallout 4 screenshots. Not sure why, Woe Industries said. And the 2 champs actually beat the game relatively fast, which does make us wonder if they just knew the game very well already. Of course, possibility. The developer said, but hey, no crime studying for a test. They didn't know the game ahead of time, so they must have amazing memories. Makes me wonder how quickly I could complete Monkey. It's been a very long time since I've actually played Monkey Island all the way through from beginning to end. Perhaps I should do that. See if I can remember it. I'm not going to commit to it because I commit to all sorts of stuff here on Reese Rambles and I never get around to any of it. 2 additional students technically completed the exam but were disqualified, one for cheating and the other for starting the test well after the allowed start time. And a couple of players were given permission to stream on Twitch. So if you are curious about the AGAT, you can find a nice long recording of it here on the link on PC Gamer via streamer New2 Dinosaur XL. And Woe Industries tuned into a couple of the test streams and found a lot of bright-eyed initial enthusiasm that eventually led to a gradual descent into frustration. Hey, that's what 80s adventure games were all about. So there you go. Maniac Mansion has been turned into an aptitude test for modern gamers, although they don't actually report here on kind of the demographics of these people. I have seen some coverage of this, assuming that they're kind of Gen Z or a kind of newer generation of gamers, and perhaps that's why they found it so difficult. But of course, if you bought this game back in the day and you were sat there on your home PC or Atari ST or Amiga or whatever platform you were playing it on, and you have no help, you don't have the internet. All right, some of these games had these hotlines in the manual that you could actually phone up and ask for help. But, ultimately sat there on your own. If you completed Maniac Mansion in under 4 hours one evening, I think you'd be quite disappointed, wouldn't you? I think you'd probably think that you hadn't got your money's worth. I remember these kind of games being the kind of thing that you'd fire up and kind of play for an hour a night, poke around, randomly trying different combinations of items and things and trying to work out where on earth you're supposed to go. And I know that Maniac Mansion, being kind of one of the earlier ones, is kind of one of the slightly less well-structured ones, slightly more complex adventure games, I think it's fair to say. I think it was a great choice for this test and a very amusing story, and it's a shame I didn't hear about this in advance because although I have played Maniac Mansion, I don't know if I've actually finished it, and the last time I played it was a very long time ago, so I would have actually quite enjoyed being a part of this. Anyway, 800 gamers took an exam to prove they could complete an 80s adventure game without peeking at a walkthrough, and only 2 passed. I have been a YouTuber now for 6 years? Yeah, November 2019, I released my very first, at least on Control-Alt-Reese. I did actually upload some stuff to YouTube years and years ago, like 2008, 2009-ish on my personal account, which I have since made private, although those videos do still exist, and they're just like random clips of stuff that I kind of filmed on a camcorder at the time. Not with me in them, not like Jackass-style stuff or anything like that, but that stuff actually got quite a few views back in the day. I think a lot of it, if not all of it, ended up being muted because I did use some copyrighted music in it, and YouTube went through and muted a lot of those older videos, their first attempt at enforcing some kind of copyright, just harking back to kind of my intro to this ramble. I've gone off topic. Yes, Control-Alt-Reese as a channel has existed since November 2019, and as a result of that, I have built up a very, very, very large list of video ideas, and I have a spreadsheet. I'm not going to show you the spreadsheet. I think there's over 150 things on there now. Every time I have an idea, I just kind of add it to the spreadsheet. Some of them, I do go back and actually do them. The vast majority of the time, it just gets ignored. If I ever get desperate, or if I ever want to be a pro YouTuber and I'm stuck for ideas and want to start churning stuff out, I will revisit it. But my point is that occasionally a video will come up and it will be something that, of course, I've already thought of. And, I'm not claiming to have been the originator of these ideas. Other people have also tried variations on these things, and I think there's only so many different combinations of things that you can try together. I guess, maybe a bit of a reference to adventure games again. But this is one that I've always been quite keen on, and it's good to see that somebody has tried this and they've actually run into a few challenges with it and actually found workarounds for these challenges and kind of gone the whole hog with it, kind of taken the whole thing and seen it through to its kind of logical conclusion, which I think is brilliant to see. And in all fairness, in all honesty, probably not what I would have done. But story over here on Tom's Hardware, just to stop beating about the bush. This is someone running a desktop PC off of AA batteries. To be fair, in my case, I was actually going to try running a laptop off AA batteries. And to be honest, I'm sure other people have probably done that. But anyway, let's not steal this guy's thunder. Enthusiast runs a desktop PC off 56 AA batteries. Intel computer lasts less than 5 minutes while playing Minesweeper. Imagine carrying a ton of AA batteries just to complete 30 minutes of office tasks on your PC. And you can see a screenshot from the video here with this rather convoluted and excellent setup with all of these lovely batteries. So, gaming laptops come with power-dense lithium-based batteries to give you on-battery gaming for a few hours. But what would happen if you ditched these specialised power cells and instead chose garden variety AA batteries to run your desktop gaming PC? This is exactly what YouTube creator Scuffed Bits decided to find out when he pulled out the old 450-watt CX430 power supply and replaced it with an ATX power supply plug from AliExpress that lets you connect its 12-volt cables to practically anywhere you like. Unfortunately, the creator did not share the specifications of their PC, but it seemed to have an entry-level Intel CPU chip, 2 RAM sticks, a 2.5-inch SATA SSD running Windows 10. They also said they'll try running a GPU on the system later. Now, AA batteries are just 1.5 volts, so you need to connect 8 in series to hit 12 volts. However, we seriously doubt you can run an x86 system with that small a number of batteries. The motherboard's status did light up when he attached the batteries to the power cable, but when he measured the power draw from the AA's, he measured a measly 0.06 amps. He powered up the system, the fan spun for a second, and nothing happened. In an attempt to achieve their goal, Scuffbits added 2 more 8-battery packs in parallel, but the computer just refused to boot. In an attempt to solve the problem, they switched from carbon to alkaline batteries, which output a higher current and last longer. However, Scuffbits still ran into the same problem. The system would turn on for only a couple of seconds before dying again. And here's where it gets interesting. They figured out the issue was with the thin wires they were using to connect the batteries, which cannot handle the voltage spikes that the PC demands when turned on. To address that issue, they added 2 big capacitors for some power buffers, used multiple wires to ensure that multiple cables carried power for the entire system, and are now running the entire thing off 56 alkaline batteries. They also cheated by using an external power supply to boot the PC, and then switched over to AA once the game was running. Of course, PCs, when they're actually booting, do draw a fair bit of current, and then they kind of settle down. So there we go. Once the system was up and running, Scuffbit switched to the AA batteries and the PC ran on battery power alone. Launching Steam required too much power, caused the PC to shut off after 52 seconds. So decided to have a short hike running on the next try, which is a rather modest game when it comes to its system requirements. Still, the computer only lasted for 5 seconds before flat out dying. But because they were adamant on completing at least one round running purely on batteries, they decided to lower the bar even further and just try to defeat Minesweeper on easy. And there we go. And that brings up another topic, and this is one that is always a bit of a cause for debate, which is Minesweeper. I've never actually understood how to play Minesweeper, and talking about that on YouTube is excellent engagement bait, because people will always go to the comments and try to explain to me how Minesweeper works, because it's very, very simple. You know, you click on a square, the numbers come up, and the numbers tell you how many neighbouring squares have mines in them. I know that. I've had it explained to me lots of times over the years. But yeah, I still don't think I quite fully understand it. So maybe explain it to me down in the comments if you're smarter than me. Anyway, yes. ATX computer running on 56 AA batteries for 5 minutes, and that's something that can be ticked off my list of video ideas because someone else out there, Scuffed Bits, has done a rather excellent job of it, and that means I can move on to one of my other things. So well done. Good job. Back in the early 2000s, I had some friends. I know, it's hard to believe, isn't it? But I did indeed. I had a bunch of Xbox friends who started off as Dreamcast friends, and then we moved on to the OG Xbox and then the 360, and we all used to get together. We used to play Halo, and this was kind of at the dawn of the online era, but we preferred to play in person. For example, we had a full 16-player Halo LAN party one night, which is the maximum number of players you can have on Halo, in person, in my friend Vinny's house. And indeed, Vinny's house did become a bit of a hotbed of early 2000s gaming activity. And one thing that he was into in a rather big way, and then by, of course, association, the rest of us also got into in a big way, were plastic instrument games. If you remember stuff like Guitar Hero, Rock Band, all of those wonderful games. I have so many fond memories of playing Rock Band around various different people's houses. You know, the full setup with the guitars and the microphone and the drums and everything, Beatles Rock Band, and I think there was an Aerosmith Rock Band and a Metallica Rock Band and a Rock Band 1, 2 and 3. And then it all just seemed to go away, didn't it? People seemed to get out of these plastic instrument games for some reason. Probably, I mean, I know nothing about this, but probably to do with the greed of the music industry. And that's usually what kills most things off, probably licensing issues, something like that. Everyone trying to get their own piece of the pie. I don't know. I am speculating. But it's something that has kind of been simmering away in the background for a few years. And of course, there are enthusiasts around these games modding them. Of course, there are some kind of open source, clones of Guitar Hero and Rock Band, that kind of thing. And people kind of making their own games, their own tracks for songs and things. So you can play along with those. There was also Rocksmith, if you remember that. I have a copy somewhere. I actually played it. I actually learned to play The Trooper by Iron Maiden on the bass, thanks to Rocksmith. Oddly enough, back when I was in a band back in the day, I played the bass. Music instrument games, something that have kind of simmered away in the background, but pretty much as far as the mainstream is concerned, all but disappeared. But it seems that one of the big names, if not the biggest, the OG name from that world, is making an attempt to bring them back. And that is great. So this is a trailer for Stage Tour, which is a game that is apparently coming in the autumn, or the fall if you prefer, this year, from Red Octane, the people who made the original Guitar Hero games, of course. And there's not really much to see in this trailer. I'm just waiting for it to get started. The vast majority of it is just, logos and intros and a plastic guitar. As you can see, this is a partnership with Kramer, of course, the guitar company. And the new plastic guitar that they have come up with does look rather nice, actually. Hopefully we can use all of our old instruments with this as well, so they don't end up in landfill if they haven't already. But as you can see from this very short gameplay clip here, the graphics do look very much the same as they did back in the early 2000s. So are they going to be a kind of, they're going to be pushing this as a retro-styled music game, rhythm game? Maybe. I mean, early 2000s is, I guess, retro now. It's probably 20 years since this kind of stuff was big, and there will be a lot of kids who, people who are teenagers and kind of young adults now who didn't even grow up with this stuff but are aware of it, or perhaps people who remember it when they were very, very young and want to get back into it for nostalgia reasons, or whatever. I don't know. But, yeah, Stage Tour coming in the fall, 2026, and there is an official website for this as well. You can sign up for notifications to get news on this. We've got a list of partners. So we've got Gibson, Epiphone and Kramer on there, who are, of course, all guitar manufacturers. We've also got Mesa Boogie, who make amps. And we've got, whatever that says, CRKD. What is CRKD? Is it a gaming thing? Oh, they sell guitar controllers. Oh, look at this. Oh, that is rather cool. Okay, yeah, so yeah, they've got a hardware manufacturer on board to make the actual controllers as well. Very cool. Build your band, pick your style, own the stage. Stage Tour is a rhythm action game that blends familiar, accessible note highway gameplay with exciting modern twists. It's poised to rekindle the flame of plastic instrument rhythm gaming with new features and modes, diverse bandmates and instruments, competitive depth, and seasonal events. I guess there'll be an online element to this as well nowadays. You'll have online... Oh, God, are they going to have, like, season pass stuff and a subscription and DLC and loot boxes? Actually, the more you dig into this, please don't do that, Red Octane. Just let us fire up the disc and play the bloody songs. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt for now. Anyway, there's some information here on the history of Red Octane. Founded by veterans, developers and passionate players from across the rhythm gaming scene. Our mission is simple, to bring rhythm gaming back with more power, more precision and a deeper connection than ever before. We're not just making games, we're creating connected rhythm experiences that unite cutting-edge controllers, genre-defining titles and a thriving community. All moving to the same beat. From day one, this is a journey we take together. The other question, I guess, being, is this the original Red Octane, or is this a bunch of people who have kind of somehow acquired the trademark and are trying to reboot it as a new thing? I don't really know. Anyway, there are some FAQs here on the website. A wide variety of music. A Gibson Kramer guitar controller will be available. You can apply to have your own music in the game if you are in a band. How is the community involved? Yeah, there are people from the rhythm gaming community involved in the development of the game. There will be multiple rounds of closed and open play testing. It will be released in the fall/autumn 2026. Why is it called Stage Tour? The meaning of the name will become clearer in coming months. Solo up to 4 players. Lead, groove, drums and vocals. Each role supports its own dedicated peripherals, along with full gamepad and keyboard compatibility. PC and home consoles. All the usual stuff. Do go and check out the website, which will be linked down below, along with everything else that I talk about in this week's Ramble. As always, I'm going to have to cut this story short now because I need a drink. Not an alcoholic one. Not just yet, anyway. Anyway, yeah, rhythm games coming back. Plastic instruments. Good stuff. Oh dear, and I was doing so well as well. This is about my 5th take of this story. I have actually had to stop for a bit and have a lemon and ginger tea, which I have now drank in my This Week in Retro mug. Might have to tone it down for the rest of this ramble. Save my throat. I thought it was over the worst of the man flu, but apparently not. Apparently it's a bit of a lingering one. Also, it doesn't help that it's so cold here in the studio. I have also just had the fan heater on for a bit. I don't have any other kind of heating here in the studio. Anyway, I'm wasting my precious time here ranting when I could be talking about the next story. And the next story is an update to a story that I featured last week about the Atari Plus consoles, of course, an offering from the new incarnation of Atari, the latest iteration. And as I've mentioned quite a few times in the past, I am a big fan of their work, particularly their stuff with Digital Eclipse and Night Dive Studios, kind of quite forward-looking stuff, but also embracing the retro, the nostalgia, and in particular their Atari Plus platform, the 2600 Plus, the 7800 Plus, of course, the Pac-Man edition of the 2600 Plus. I bought the original 2600 Plus with my own money a couple of years back when that was first released, and I reviewed it on the channel. And I went into quite a lot of depth and did a teardown and stuff as well, which a lot of other people didn't do. I was then contacted by someone, and they then proceeded to send me the 7800 Plus and the 2600 Plus Pac-Man edition for review, which was very nice of them because they were so impressed with my work. So that's where I stand on the whole thing. That is my relationship to Atari and to these new consoles. It's going again, isn't it? Come on, stick with it. This story is an update to the Flashcart story from last week. So the Uno Kart Plus for the Atari 2600 Plus and 7800 Plus, $43. And I mentioned at the time that I was going to go and order one for myself. And being a man of my word, I did. And here it is, the 2600 Plus Uno Kart Plus. I'm quite impressed with the build quality of this. I haven't tested it yet, I will say, but yeah, it's got the micro SD slot in the top. We've got the OLED screen, and we've got the slidey, pressy, toggly thing. And basically, you stick a load of games on an SD card. You select which one you want on the screen. You boot up the console, and as far as the console is concerned, it is looking at the original game cartridge. And this is different to the way that a lot of other flash cartridges work, of course, because usually you would boot up into a menu system, and you'd scroll through the list of files on the card, select the one that you want. It then sends a signal back to the cartridge saying, load this game into a special area in flash memory or whatever, and then that's what the console actually sees and loads. Can't do that on the Plus consoles because it can't do that communication back to the console. It does that dump to memory and then loads it up in a software emulator running on an SoC as a one-time thing. So, yeah, people had to try to work out a way around that, and after a lot of speculation, this is what they have come up with. I will also say some of the other existing flashcarts on the market for the original consoles, if you just put one game on an SD card, it will just load that one individual game, and you can actually get around it that way as well if you already own one of those, just as a kind of point of interest that people always like to point out to me when I talk about flashcarts and the 2600 Plus. Now, why am I talking about this again, especially considering I haven't had a chance to actually check this out and review it properly? And I will do in a video, I promise, at some point. Well, somebody has been in touch with me over on my Discord server. Somebody called Mimo. And that's not Manemo, who is a regular contributor here at Reese Rambles, but no, Mimo from the Atari Age forums. Thank you ever so much for your kind offer to send over your flash cartridge for the Plus consoles for me to check out. And I do need to get back in touch with you and just confirm that because I am interested. So please don't think that I'm ignoring you and that I'm not interested. I have had a very busy week this week. But yeah, I wanted to bring people's attention to this because this is another solution, and this is a homegrown British solution as well. Not that I have anything at all against the French. Of course, this cartridge came from France, and yeah, vive la France and all that. Our European neighbours, always happy to support those. But you know what? I do have a special place in my heart for British ingenuity and British engineering, as you might expect. So I do like to shine a spotlight on that as well. So this is designed by Carrie. It is perfect for the Atari Plus consoles. It's based on the Raspberry Pi Pico, much like the PicoIDE that I've been looking at. Raspberry Pi Pico has been an absolute game changer for like hobbyist electronics and stuff. I know the Arduino and stuff was already out there, but just seems to have taken things to another level, doesn't it? Most original 7800 games work, and a lot of homebrew, up to 128k. You've got Pokey, YM Sound, high score kart support, and save key functions supported on the Plus consoles. We've got the most original 2600 carts work too, but Champ games, Melody, and ARM processor games are not supported. I would assume the ARM processor games at the very least refers to kind of modern homebrew games that use an ARM processor inside the cartridge. Of course, for a bit of extra oomph in the 2600. I'm not quite... I think Champ Games, they were a publisher back in the day who did some weird stuff, maybe to do with the capacity of the cartridges. I can't quite remember. Anyway, a lot of games are in bin format. I believe it's been a long time since I looked at my 2600 and my Harmony cart, but they do need to be converted to UF2 format for this Flashcart. And Mimo reports that they have successfully converted over 400 games, but of course can't make those available. Probably quite rightly if you want to stay off Atari's radar. And the interesting thing about this approach is that only one game at a time can be loaded. So you drag and drop the game onto the cartridge, onto the Raspberry Pi Pico's internal flash memory, and then that's your game that you're playing on the console until you plug it back into your computer and load up another game. And that, I think, can be actually a bit of a bonus. It does kind of help to focus you. You know, knowing that you can just flip a switch and go back to a big menu with hundreds or thousands of games on it can be a massive distraction. And of course, back in the day, you would have gone down to the shops and bought yourself a new game, and then that would be it. That would be your entertainment for the weekend or whatever, or you'd rent a game or whatever. And this is kind of closer to that original experience. So not trying to spin a limitation as if it was some kind of amazing feature, of course, but some people do prefer that experience, and I totally get that. In fact, I think I might prefer that experience as someone who is very easily distracted. I guess I'll find out when I try this thing. So anyway, the cart does require external power when it is plugged into the console, and it does offer Enig gold contacts on the PCB and chamfered edge connectors. It's £25 GBP plus shipping, which to the UK is £5. So it's quite a bit cheaper than this, which is, I guess, a bit of a selling point. £14 to ship to the USA. That's Royal Mail, or £10 if you want to ship it with Every. EU is £11, and if you are somewhere else in the world, you can get in touch with Mimo via the Atari Age forums and make an inquiry as to how you can get it shipped to you. So here are some pictures of the cartridge. Pretty unassuming, but a very functional looking thing, and of course available in black and Atari 2600 Plus Pac-Man Edition yellow, in addition to purple, which is always a good option. Big fan of the purple. But there you go, a new flashcart option, another new flashcart option for the Atari 2600 Plus and 7800 Plus consoles. My Uno Kart Plus has arrived. I'm going to get around to testing this. Mimo, yes, I am very interested in this. I will send you a DM, and I will also get that on the channel as well. Just have a look at the two different approaches. I'm not going to compare the two. I'm not going to declare a winner. Just mull over the benefits of the two different approaches, I think. So, another flashcart option for the Atari Plus consoles can only ever be a good thing. So thank you. Thank you for getting in touch and for letting me know about this. Links to all of the stories, you should be muted. Links to all of the stories that I feature in this week's Ramble will be down in the description, as always, as well as a link to my Discord server if you do want to pop in and let me know about any interesting projects and stuff. And that, yeah, good news. Good news again for fans of modern day Atari. And indeed, Mimo isn't the only person who has contacted me this week about a very cool hardware project. No, somebody else has also been in touch, and I also really love this one, so I'm going to give this one a shout out as well. And again, this has been offered to me for review on the channel, so I do intend to have a look at this. The person involved this time is Peter Bridger. Thank you ever so much, Peter, for getting in touch. And this was actually off the back of my PicoIDE review. Now, I made a bit of a throwaway comment in that review about the PicoIDE feeling very authentic when it was in hard drive mode, feeling like you were running from the original hardware. Apart from the fact, I also mentioned that it was much faster than original mechanical hard drive, but mainly apart from the fact that it didn't make the right noises. Now, I know there are some solutions out there that allow you to plug a little board into your hard drive activity LED, and every time that LED flashes, it makes like a clicking noise. It's called a hard drive clicker, I think. There are a few options out there, open source and whatnot. It uses a little piezo speaker, and you know, they at least give you some kind of audible feedback that something is happening with your SSD or whatever. And they can sound okay, actually. I don't really have much personal experience, but I've watched LGR videos about them and stuff, and I know people that that use them and speak highly of them. But this is that taken to a completely different level. This is proper enthusiast stuff, and I am a huge fan of this. So Peter's website is strifestreams.com, and the product is called the HDD Synth, making hard disk drives loud again. Be Quiet laptop. Now, I've had to unmute it specifically for this story because I'm actually going to play you some audio from a video, and I'm hoping that Peter doesn't copyright strike me, as he actually sent this to me, and he has uploaded this video to his own channel. But yeah, this is... Well, let me explain. Let me read from the website in Peter's own words. So most retro PCs are retrofitted with a solid-state hard drive these days due to the rarity, unreliability and inconveniences of using a traditional mechanical spinning drive. However, that means that when using a retro PC, you miss out on the full nostalgic experience of hearing the hard drive spin up when you power the system on, click and whir as your favourite games load, and spin down after powering off. The HDD Synth is an ISA expansion card that recreates the sound of a mechanical hard drive for your retro PC. Now, the fun thing about this is it doesn't use the hard drive activity LED. This is an ISA card that actually detects hard drive activity on the ISA bus itself, and you don't get much more authentic than that. And it also uses samples. So these are samples of actual old mechanical hard drives playing through a speaker. And like I say, I do have the video loaded up. So let's give this a listen. And as mentioned, this does do spin up and spin down, and also the clicky noises that you might expect from a mechanical hard drive. So this is a little clip of the video. Indeed, some exciting hard drive noises for you there. Bit of a first here on Reese Rambles. Anyway, so sample-based recreation of mechanical hard disk sounds, spin up, idle, access, and spin down. It takes an SD card which can hold multiple hard drive sample packs, so you can recreate the sound of different mechanical hard drives. If you have a specific particular favourite model of hard drive that you would love to hear once more, I'm sure you can get someone to sample that, or you can even sample it yourself, or maybe put in a request with Peter. There's a volume control. You can make it very loud or silent. And also it uses hard disk drive detection via the LED or via the ISA bus for true plug and play. So we have a roadmap here. I just noticed this also uses the Raspberry Pi Pico, by the way, based on what I can see here in the video. Again, another win for the Pico. And we do have a roadmap here. So the Mark 1 prototype is complete. The Mark 2 prototype is in progress, which has the volume control, the ability to change sample packs, and also spin down support. And prototype Mark 3 is planned, which adds ISA-based hard drive detection and a metal back bracket. I think does it already have the ISA-based hard drive detection? Is that detecting the specific model, maybe? Not quite sure, but it does sound interesting. And there are also some models that are going to be planned when this goes into production. So there's the HDD Synth 1000, which is the full experience, the one that we've just seen and heard in that video. And there's also the 500, which is a cost-reduced version, which does use the hard drive LED cable. But from what I can see, yeah, it doesn't support spin down, I guess because obviously that would be when you turn the system off. But it does do the spin up and the clicking for the access and stuff like that, and has a single onboard sample pack. So that's going to be, I guess that's going to run entirely on the Pico itself without all the extra surrounding hardware, just to get the cost right down. But still, you know, sounds like a very cool option. So we've got Peter Bridger, who is the project lead here, who has designed the hardware and the software for this. And also Mark Angus, who is doing the sound design and creating the audio samples for the HDD Synth. And yeah, if you like me, run your old PCs from compact flash cards or solid state drives, and you are pining for the olden days and missing those old mechanical hard drive sounds, this is probably about the best option we're going to get. How authentic can you get proper sampled sounds from an original mechanical hard drive? I don't think you can say fairer than that. And Peter, once more, I will be replying to you. I promise. I have been busy this week, and I will definitely take you up on your offer of reviewing one of these on the channel, because this is very much up my street, and I think it's going to go down very, very, very well with my audience indeed. But for those of you who listen to Reese Rambles, consider this a bit of a exclusive sneak preview. And so, as you might expect, it is time for our regular Doom story. Did you think I was going into video of the week there? No, not quite. Maybe we'll do that next. But every week we seem to have a story about Doom, because the Doom community are a crazy bunch of people. They're always doing quite interesting things with id Software's seminal 1993 first-person shooter. Of course, there's going to be a shout-out to the Doom Shrine behind me, my collection of Doom-related releases and paraphernalia, as always. We've seen Doom running on all sorts of weird and wonderful devices. Most recently, perhaps, an industrial cake machine. I think a very smart and talented and handsome YouTuber covered that. I can't quite remember who that was. But this one's quite different. And this one does make me wonder if there might be perhaps some ethical concerns. I'm not quite sure how to feel about this. Anyway, this is a dish of human neurons playing Doom. Now, a few years ago, these same people actually had human neurons playing Pong, and I believe I reported on that at the time. I can't remember. It was at least 2 or 3 years ago. But yeah, a dish of neurons playing Doom is the wildest thing I've seen in ages, reports Tom Hawking over on Gizmodo.com. And this is a company called Cortical Labs, and perhaps the weirdest part of this whole story is that it's actually a product that you can buy, the CL1, which is a little device here, the world's first code deployable biological computer. Lab-grown neurons process information and learn, and they have actually developed their own chip. So it's a silicon chip which has human neurons incorporated into the chip. Actual neurons living on a silicon chip. These are brain cells, human brain cells. In 2021, we grew real neurons on a chip, and they taught themselves how to play Pong. The neurons were linked to a computer and gradually learned to sense the position of the game's electronic ball and control a virtual paddle. Probably trying to communicate with the outside world, saying something similar to, kill me, why did you create me, you monsters? I don't know. But anyway, a couple of years ago, a company called Cortical Labs, if we go back to Gizmodo, released a video that showed a simplified version of Pong being played by a culture of human neurons in a petri dish. The idea that a bunch of neurons in a dish can do anything is impressive enough. But it turns out that things have gotten significantly crazier since then, because the company has now managed to get a similar culture of neurons to play Doom. In a very slick marketing video, the company demonstrates real neuron gameplay, Doom running on its CL1 neural computing system, a microchip upon which 200,000 human neurons are mounted in something called a multi-electrode array. For comparison, while the exact number of neurons in an average human brain remains the subject of some debate, it's in the order of tens of billions, which really just reinforces how astonishingly powerful and complex our own brains are. Anyway, the video is wild, and it just gets wilder as various company representatives explain exactly what's going on. And of course, I will link to this down in the description. You do need to go and watch it yourself. The chip isn't running Doom, it's playing Doom. Or to be more accurate, various elements of the on-screen data are being mapped to patterns of electric stimuli, which are then transmitted to the neurons. The neurons respond to these stimuli with signals of their own, which control the on-screen character's actions. If the neurons fire in a specific pattern, Doom Guy shoots. If they fire in another pattern, he moves to the right, and so on. At one point, a researcher shows microscope images of the chip, and we see how intricate and very clearly organic webs of neurons wind around the crisp, straight lines of circuitry. It looks like something straight out of a sci-fi film. I mean, look at this. And if you are watching this on YouTube, there you go, there's a screenshot of it. The neurons are learning, so they're not particularly good at Doom. This sounds a lot like me. The cells play like a beginner who's never seen a computer, and in all fairness, they haven't, but give them a couple of years, and who knows, the plasticity of the networks that neurons form is a big part of what makes our own brains so powerful and adaptable. If these networks adapt in the same manner, we might just find that they end up being very, very good at Doom. Perhaps even, this is me talking, not the story, could have a deathmatch against John Romero himself. He does like to play deathmatch against people at various events and things, and absolutely thrashes them usually. Of course, one of the co-creators of the game. Yeah, maybe we could see him playing against human neurons. Yeah, so the Neurons are playing Free Doom, which runs on the Doom engine, uses none of Doom's iconic demons or weapons, which remain under copyright. They're just kind of pointing that out. But yeah, obviously many fascinating and potentially troubling questions raised by this sort of technology, continues Gizmodo. One that springs to mind immediately is, whose cells are these? They must contain somebody's DNA. Are we going to end up with another Henrietta Lacks situation 2 decades down the line, where every one of the neurocomputers thrashing everyone online at Call of Duty 17 contains neurons that originate with the same person? The company has launched something it's called the Cortical Cloud, which promises to allow developers the world over to experiment with the CL1 via a Python-based API. It's like, I initially thought of RoboCop, but of course RoboCop, they took a human brain and put it into a robot, didn't they? I mean, obviously they didn't. It was a film back in the 80s, but perhaps more Terminator, because that was based around like a neuron-based chip, wasn't it? Because like the story of like going back in time and destroying the chip, I think that was Terminator 2. Of course, nowadays we have AI, or at least these large language models running on GPUs and stuff like that. So perhaps we don't need to actually involve actual proper neurons and proper human DNA in all of this. But evidently, this company, Cortical Labs, has continued down that path, and they have developed something that can, for all intents and purposes, think for itself, or at least respond to stimuli. I don't know, it just feels a bit icky to me. But then, of course, we've got AI, we've got these large language models, and, of course, these agentic things that can now, connect to various systems and run code and do all of that. We've also got all the stuff that's happening in the Middle East as well. We've got brains on computer chips. We are very much living in the future at the moment, aren't we? And it's quite scary, actually. I think I'm going to go back to playing with 40-year-old hardware. And another story for you now, all about AI and the terrible effects thereof. Of course, I have spoken somewhat positively about this AI stuff in the past. I don't think it's all negative, obviously the impact on the planet and all of that stuff, but I do acknowledge that it does have its uses, and it is going to be quite a revolutionary thing, for better or for worse, as far as the human race is concerned. But seems it's not a good thing for retro gaming, particularly in this specific case. And this is a story over on Kotaku.com. AI-fueled RAM crisis forces retro game preservation site to permanently close. Writes Lewis Parker, the impact of AI data centers on hosting and hardware costs have made maintaining the site unsustainable, its founder said. So this is Myrient, or Myrient. I'm going to go with Myrient, I think. A retro-focused video game preservation site with over 390 terabytes of organised collections. Will be shutting down for good in roughly 30 days. Founded in October 2022 by a user simply known as Alexi, Myrient has remained ad-free, paywall-free and login-free since it first emerged 3 years ago, relying on a small pool of donations to keep the site online. So what's changed? You guessed it, the rising cost of RAM, SSD and hard disk drive caused by the never-ending demand from unsustainable AI data centers has greatly impacted Myrient's operating costs to the point that Alexi is paying roughly $6,000 every month just to keep the servers online. That's not the only cause, however, as Alexi announced on Myrient's official Discord server that while operating costs have risen, donations have remained at the same level. As traffic continued to increase last year, the amount of funding from donations remained the same. I've been paying more than $6,000 out of pocket every month in order to cover the difference, which is not sustainable. Alexi also stated that several new specialised download managers, which presumably does not include the supported download managers outlined on Myrient's FAQ page, operate in a way that takes advantage of the site's anti-download limit policy. In past several months, many specialised download managers were created that completely bypass the site, donation messages and download protections. The use of Myrient for commercial, for-profit purposes has always been strictly forbidden. Such egregious and abusive usage of the site cannot be tolerated anymore. The Discord announcement specifically states That Myrient will remain online until the 31st of March 2026, but no further content can be uploaded as of the 26th of February. Alexei also asked that users please download any content they find important in the time they have left, as any further donations made from now until Myrient's closure will be solely put towards paying off the site's monthly hosting costs. So yeah, one of the world's biggest archives, if not the biggest, 390 terabytes, all organised collections for pretty much every single platform you can think of, hosted over on Myrient, now being taken offline due to these insane costs of hardware, costs of hosting, which is being blamed on AI, all of this stuff being funneled towards AI data centres and the crazy amount of money that's being funneled into that. And also people basically leeching from the site, bypassing the donation messages and things, taking advantage of, the good nature of Alexei and the fact that, this has been hosted with no advertising, no paywalls, not even logins to, try to control who can have access to this stuff. It's just been put online completely freely, very much in the kind of spirit of the old school internet. And sadly, the leeches have taken hold and ruined another good thing. So not quite sure what's going to come of this. Maybe someone will step up and offer to cover the cost of hosting, or take it under their wing, or a wealthy donor will come along and rescue the whole operation. But as it stands at the moment, from what I can see, this will very sadly be shutting down by the 31st of March. I do know of at least one person who is kind of taking copies of everything. I'm sure a lot of people out there are just mass downloading everything on the site, which is probably adding to its problems. But hopefully these collections will spring up in other places. Of course, archive.org, places perhaps with torrent-based hosting, so people can kind of share the load of hosting those. But as one central kind of go-to place for, one-stop shop for everything you could possibly want in the world of retro gaming, sadly, it's going away. And that, of course, brings us around rather neatly to my regular Videos of the Week feature, wherein I feature videos that I've seen here on the old YouTubes in the past week that have entertained, educated, enlightened, or otherwise improved my life in some small way. Often there is one video, often there's more than one, often they are retro and vintage computing, gaming and or technology related, and often they aren't. But this week I have 4 videos for you, and it is rather a mixed bag. So without further ado, and of course in the knowledge that I have already covered a fair bit of stuff, I'd be interested to see how long this ramble is. It does feel like quite a long one. That's what she said. Anyway, the first video this week is our Eurovision entry, which I have talked about, of course, over the past couple of weeks. Look Mum No Computer, aka Sam Battle. He is a fellow technology electronics YouTuber. He's a tinkerer. He builds his own modular synths and stuff, and he has been selected as the UK's entry for the Eurovision Song Contest this year, which apparently is the 70th anniversary of the contest. Last week, I couldn't remember when it actually started, so there you go. It was 70 years ago. You can do the maths on that, because I'm terrible at maths. Our song is called 1, 2, 3. And as you might imagine, the chorus is indeed in German, although it's a bit of fun, a bit tongue-in-cheek, and I genuinely love this song. I'm not saying this just because he is a YouTuber and because I am a big fan of his work in general. This is proper Eurovision stuff, and I think our UK entries, we've had some incredibly talented people write some very, very good songs over the past few years. I mean, I'm not ashamed to admit that I have hosted Eurovision parties in the past, and I'm probably going to be doing that again this year. And maybe we can have a Control-Alt-Reese Eurovision party. While our songs have been good, Eurovision usually likes novelty, usually likes a bit of madness, and perhaps that's why we have gone with Look Mum No Computer, because I don't think anyone would argue that Sam is mad in a very good way. Now, I'm not going to show this actual video. I'm not going to hit play on this video because I have made that mistake in the past, and I have been hit with copyright claims. I think Windows 95 man, when I tried to talk about his video, I actually ended up having to blank out that whole section of the video. It limits your reach and all sorts of other stuff, so I don't want to take that risk. But do go and check it out. Nothing against Sam himself, of course. It's just that the Eurovision people are famously litigious. But But yeah, the video itself is brilliant. It features, Cosmo, his synth, and his amazing orange Mini Clubman, who, as a fellow classic Mini Clubman owner, I do very much appreciate. Of course, that has featured on his channel in the past as well. And it is a lot of fun, so do go and check that out if you're interested, even if, there's loads of comments on this from not only people in foreign countries saying they're going to vote for the UK for the first time, but also a lot of people who've previously had no interest whatsoever in Eurovision, saying that they're going to actually watch it for the first time. So that's great, bring a whole new audience to it. And best of luck to Sam, I will say, because he is a bloody brilliant bloke. The next video I have for you is another music video. And again, I'm not going to hit play on this, but this is from the Gorillaz, of course, Damon Albarn's side project. I have seen Blur live a few times. Most recently, they were a big comeback gig at Wembley, which was absolutely amazing, I will say. And I'm not a huge Gorillaz fan. I do appreciate the stuff that I've heard, and, I quite appreciate the what Damon is doing with it. But their new album is out, or it is out soon, and they have released this song and this video from it called The Mountain, The Moon Cave, and The Sad God. And the reason I'm talking about this, there's not only the electronic music angle, of course, quite innovative stuff, as you might expect from Gorillaz, but the video is 100% hand animated. So it draws inspiration from classic Disney films, stuff like The Jungle Book, I think, was a very strong influence on this, and perhaps some classic Ghibli stuff as well. And there's no CG in it, there's no AI in it, it is all hand-painted, hand-drawn, and it is a beautiful thing to behold. Tells quite an interesting and weird story, of course, with the characters from the Gorillaz themselves. And it's 8 minutes and 43 seconds long. I woke up this morning and saw this. This was being recommended to me on my TV. So I sat and watched it in bed, and I actually quite enjoyed it a lot. So always nice to feature something handmade in this day and age. And that is something that they are very much pushing for this album and for this video in particular. So yeah, I enjoyed that. Hopefully you will enjoy that as well. But if you don't, the next two videos are very much my usual fare. So this is Rob Smith. I know I talk about pretty much all of his projects here, and that's because he is a genius. He's also a friend of mine, I will say. But electronic stuff, programming stuff, 3D printing stuff, CAD, designing enclosures and that kind of thing. And he's unstoppable. He was on the table next to me at the Kickstart Amiga show a couple of years ago. Drove me absolutely insane with his disco car wash machine, floppy disk washing machine thing. That's kind of when we struck up a bit of a in-person, real-life friendship. And in fact, that actually blew up. I think I've showed this off before, but this is the audio amp from that very machine. You can see, well, you probably can't see, but the top of the chip has actually blown off here because he overloaded it. And then, of course, it went silent, which I appreciated very much. This was at a later show at the Cambridge Computer Museum. And he actually let me keep this as a souvenir because he knew that I would appreciate that. So anyway, that's by the by, not really related to the video. But this project is not to do with audio, but it is to do with floppy disks, which do seem to be a bit of a recurring theme with Rob. Oh, I also appeared in one of his videos when he did the alien scanner thing, and we went to Laser Quest in Leicester and played laser tag and filmed the whole thing and tested his scanner, which was very cool. That was a lot of fun to be involved with. So thanks, Rob. But this is his Mr. Floppy, which is a hardware interface that allows you to connect a real floppy drive to your Mister. Of course, hopefully the Mister doesn't need any introduction, but it's that FPGA-based system that allows you to run lots of cores of classic computers and games consoles from the past. Of course, it's FPGA, so you're potentially looking at very accurate recreation, simulation, emulation of those classic systems, whatever your preferred term is. And this floppy interface runs, it works in conjunction. He was actually showing this off at that Kickstart show as well, although it was kind of an earlier version of this. But this works in conjunction with a modified version of the Minimig Mister core for the Amiga. So you can already run Amiga games and software and stuff in the Minimig core on the Mister. And what Rob has done is taken that and modified it and added support for this hardware floppy interface, and you can actually run your original floppies on there, including, because it is a direct, low-level hardware interface, including copy-protected floppies. And not only that, if you're not interested in physical floppy disks, perhaps you don't have your own original Amiga floppy disks anymore or whatever, he has also modified the core to add support for some copy-protected floppy disk formats as well for the Minimig core. And that is something that has not been previously supported. Now, at the moment, this is a separate fork, but he has submitted his work upstream, and maybe that will be incorporated into the Minimig core. And of course, because this is a hardware interface that just connects to the MiSTer, using its GPIO at a very kind of low level, it could also be supported in other cores. It could become the standard floppy interface for the MiSTer, perhaps, and be picked up by some other cores, the PC core, specifically, or maybe Atari ST, other floppy disk-based systems that are supported by the MiSTer. Brilliant work, as always, by Rob. And also a really fascinating video, as you might expect, telling the story of how this thing was developed. So, that's 11 minutes, 27 seconds. And as always, with Rob, he talks about the whole process from start to finish, how this thing was kind of conceived and how he's put it together, designed it and built it. Hardware, software, all good stuff. And shows it in action as well, as you might expect. Finally, my fourth video, and this is Matt Casey, another channel I do talk about a lot here on Reese Rambles, but I do really enjoy his stuff. And also, early on my channel and also on my website as well, I played with the original Famicom quite a lot, the Nintendo Family Computer, which of course went on to be the NES, the NES in the West. And particularly messing with the video output on those as well. And one thing that I always noticed was that on those consoles, on the original hardware consoles, even on the same TV, they never output the same colours. You can fire up the same game on 3 or 4 different Famicoms, and the colours are very, very different on those different consoles. Because back in those days, with analog video and stuff, the stuff was, analog. And Matt KC goes on this really interesting journey kind of into this, trying to determine what is the best, well, not the best, but the most authentic version of the colours in the original Super Mario Bros. On the NES. And spoiler alert, basically comes to the conclusion that, as a result of that analog hardware and as a result of the way that different NTSC TVs and displays work, and also the original consoles work, and the limitations of NTSC itself, that basically there is no right answer. As long as it kind of looks like it's supposed to, as long as you can see what it's supposed to be on screen, and the greens are kind of at least a shade of green and the blues are at least kind of a shade of blue, then that's good enough for those original hardware designers back in the early 1980s. And he also talks about emulators and how, they all use different kind of colour standards, colour palettes for emulating the NES. So, really interesting journey. And as someone who has experimented with these consoles in the past and pondered this myself, I thought it was quite interesting. Of course, people nowadays with emulation, with the MiSTer and the FPGA and stuff, always striving for perfection. Of course, the most accurate emulation you can get for these original systems. And it turns out you can't even get the colours right, because there's no such thing as right colours. I've probably just completely spoilt that video and, given you a good reason not to watch it. But if you think that sounds interesting, do go and watch it. It's a very interesting 8-minute long journey from Matt KC. And as always, his channel is absolutely fascinating. So do check out his other stuff as well. So just to sum up those 4 videos of the week for you, just before we wrap this one up, we've got Luck Mum No Computer, 1, 2, 3, his Eurovision entry for the UK this year. We've got the Gorillaz' new song, The Mountain, the Moon Cave and the Sad God, that beautiful hand-painted video, 8 minutes and 43 seconds long, brilliant journey, brilliant piece of art. We've got Rob Smith with his floppy drive interface for the MiSTer, for the Amiga core specifically. That is an 11-minute, 27-second video. And we also have Matt KC with his 8-minute and 12-second exploration of why NES colours look so different in emulators. They are my 4 videos of the week. For this week, they are all linked down below in the videos of the week section in the description. If you are watching this on YouTube, on my second channel, youtube.com/ReeseRambles. If you are listening to this on your podcast platform of choice, hopefully you can go into the description and all of that stuff will be there. Of course, that varies depending per platform. Not only am I losing the plot now, it's quite late on a Friday afternoon. My throat is absolutely wrecked. I've had strepsils and cold and flu medicine and lemon and ginger tea and all sorts just to hold this episode together, but we got there together in the end. This goes out at 2 minutes to midnight UK time on my second channel, as mentioned, and also on all of the podcast platforms. Thank you ever so much for joining me. I would give credit to all of the people over on my Discord server, who, like I usually do, who have been discussing the stories this week. But I actually forgot to make a list this week, and this section is 13 minutes long as it is already. And I really don't fancy attempting trying to re-record the whole thing just for that. So you know who you are. Thank you ever so much for all of your usual chit-chat around these subjects, and if you're out there and you're not on the Discord server, the link is down below to come and join us and discuss everything from canal boats to gardening to the weather to solar power to retro gaming, cars, football, politics, the war in the Middle East, all of that stuff. Lovely stuff. Yeah, don't come specifically just to talk about that. Yeah, no, don't do that. That's not good. Anyway, thanks. That's it. That's it. That's it for this week. So thank you. And yeah, my latest video is all about... what was my latest video all about? The PicoIDE. It is 31 minutes and 5 seconds long, and I stick it in my Pentium 233 MMX system. I check out the optical drive emulation, playing GL Quake with an image of the original Quake CD, so we get to hear that wonderful Nine Inch Nails soundtrack. I also check out the hard drive emulation and fire up a disk image from my 486 PC and run DOS on this machine, see how well that works. So many interesting use cases for this. Really cool, easy to use, well-designed, affordable piece of hardware. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing how it develops and seeing a lot more people out there finally start to get their hands on this. But that's all I have for you for this week's Ramble. So thank you ever so much for joining me. That is genuinely it. So bye.